Good morning. It's 9 a.m. Monday, June 12th, 2023. This is the Muscatine County Board of Supervisors. I'd like to call the meeting to order. First is to review the agenda.
Move to approve as presented.
Motion by Jeff, second by Nathan. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Next is discussion and possible action to approve claims dated June 12, 2023 in the amount of $280,767.61.
I'll move the approval.
Second.
Motion by Jeff, second by Kurt. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Next is discussion and possible action to approve an ordinance rezoning approximately 16.69 acres in Wapsie Township from an A1 agricultural district to R1 residential district on the second of three readings.
Move to approve. Second.
Motion by Nathan, second by Jeff. This is a roll call vote. Jeff?
Aye.
Nathan?
Aye.
I vote aye. Danny?
Aye.
And Kurt?
Aye.
Motion passes. Next is items with Planning and Zoning Administrator, Eric Furnace. Morning, Eric.
Morning.
First is discussion and possible action to accept a variance granted by the Muscatine County Board of Adjustment on June 2nd, 2023.
Okay, there was one variance granted, it was, at 1626, 231st Street, so G28, would allow the owner of that property to, construct a detached accessory structure in what is the front yard space of the dwelling. However, it would still be approximately 515 feet from the county road right away. It's a large agricultural project, it's just not a farm exempt scenario. The house is clear back to the back of the property, right on the edge of timber and ravines, so there's really no available space for a detached accessory structure. And due to the topography and the distance and the tree shielding, they granted the variance for they'll be allowed to put the shed in front of the house.
Like right in front of the house or where?
I think one of the maps that I sent,
Not near that other people's property line.
no.
It should be in your packet. I don't know how well it came through the scanner. Maybe I didn't see it. Okay.
It's just, their house is clear back here, and it'd be just in front
Oh.
of their house, but nowhere near that neighbor.
Yeah. And there's nothing on the other side there. Okay.
No, there's farm field,
Yeah.
there's a bit of a shed there in front. So. And that was the only variance that was granted.
And we need to take action to accept that.
Yes, sir.
I'll move that.
Second.
Motion by Nathan, second by Jeff. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. What else you got, Eric? Anything?
If you have any questions on that fireworks permit, I can talk about that at that time. Just kind of, there was some questions about whether those were needed, and what the law stated nowadays, but.
Okay.
Is it, well, actually, you'll come back up then.
Yep.
Yeah, it's on,
That's fine.
10B.
That's fine.
Next is items with County Engineer Brian Horowski. Brian, good morning.
Good morning.
First is discussion and possible action to set a letting date of July 24th, 2023 at 9 a.m. for project L-MW-5-73-70, a 100 feet by 24 feet 6 continuous concrete slab bridge over Mosquito Creek on North Isaac Avenue.
Yes, so this bridge is, it's on North Isaac, it is just south of 132nd Street, and it is currently posted, so.
I'll move the approval.
Second.
Motion by Jeff, second by Kurt. Is that right? Did you second that, Kurt?
Danny.
Or Danny, I'm sorry, Danny. So I got a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
So that bridge, we'll most likely put a late start date of next spring. We've noticed some pretty positive responses from contractors by opening up that window and making it a lot more flexible for them to come in and do the work. It makes budgeting a lot tougher, but we've seen really good responses in our bid prices that we've received recently, so.
Okay.
That's all I had.
All right. Thank you. Next is discussion and possible action to approve the minutes of the June 5, 2023 regular meeting.
Move approve.
Second.
Motion by Jeff, second by Kurt, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion passes. Correspondence, Jeff, you have anything?
Yeah, I had another email correspondence with Vicky Bishop on Pettibone. I think she indicated she reached out to the rail and found out that I had already done that, so I don't know that she didn't believe me. But, and I know Brian and I had a little bit of correspondence about it. I think he's looking at some alternatives. She has one continued, you know, the issue, one of the concerns that she has, that she's talked to the railroad about, I talked to him, and Brian and I talked about it briefly, is if you go down Pettibone, first crossing has crossing guards, but that's the only one that does, and I drove it, looked at it, but if you look at the angle of the crossings, and Brian kinda confirmed that, really wouldn't be possible for the railroad to put a crossing guard in there with their right of way, they don't have enough room to go 90 degrees to the road to do that, so, and without them acquiring a bunch of right of way or doing something, I don't know how that would happen, so, I've talked to him about it and said, you know, look at it and see what kind of things, and then, Brian also was reaching out and looking at, you know, the other issue that she's very concerned about is the pits, how close the pit is to the roadway, and concerned about people driving off and feels we should have guarding. Brian says, you know, we meet, the road ditch and our stuff meets all the DOT standards, but it is a fairly steep drop off to the water there. So Brian's looking at some of the mining regulations and, see what obligations they may have to deal with that as well, so. That's about all.
Okay, Nathan?
I did not have any correspondence, no.
Okay. I had, conversations with a resident regarding the, firework permit, and that's all I had. Danny?
I had an email from Don Paulson in regards to the shooting range and concerns about where we'd come up with the money and the amount of money that it would cost the county, and so there's some concerns by that resident in regards to that. And then I had another email and phone conversation with John Kramer about veterans. I brought it up to Jeff that day. Transportation to the VA meeting, VA appointment. Apparently, we used to be the link between the county and the DAV to set up transportation for veterans to get to their medical appointments, and we stopped that last fall. But now we have a service that the VA does it, and the county no longer does anything, but the members are supposed to call the VA for transportation, and there was a veteran that had a couple cancellations, and then he drove himself, and he can't see good, and his son was upset, so I talked to Eric over to Veterans Affairs on that. He wanted a phone call. I don't know if that veteran ever called him and followed up, but he's trying to help him out everywhere he could, any way he could, so those are the two things I had.
Okay.
I would just say,
Oh, I'm sorry.
I would just echo for anybody watching or who watches this later, Eric Sanders would be the first person to call on any veteran-related issue. He's generally very on top of things.
Okay, very good. Kurt?
Yeah, I had one call on from David Millage on the wind farm project that has been pursued around the West Liberty area, and his feelings. And then I also had one call yesterday in regards to our ATV, UTV rules and regulations. Just didn't know what the rules were, and had been told by somebody, and it was kind of, I think, a discussion between them, maybe a bet, and he was wanting to know. I sent him the copy of our resolution and said it mimicked the state very closely, and so.
In regards to that, don't we, a few weeks ago, we made the change and then have to go to a public,
Yep, yep,
that'll be eventually coming here?
yeah, probably next week there'll be an agenda item to set a public hearing on the proposed amendments.
Thank you.
But they didn't know, 35 mile an hour, the SMB sign in the back window or in the, and what they actually had to have. So, like I told them, I said, so your dealers don't tell you that, it might hinder a sale, and
Right.
so, something they need to be aware of.
Okay. Is that it?
Mhm.
Okay, thank you. Committee reports. Jeff, you have anything?
Yeah, on the Wednesday, the 6th, they had the Muscatine Joint Communications Commission's, the MCJCC. And I think probably the most important thing to note, at one point we looked at eliminating the MCJCC. It was kind of redundant, but there is proposal right now, and I don't know if it's legislation yet or maybe coming back, that they're gonna sounds like the state may be making significant changes to the EMA commission. And so we're not certain that would be a good move at this point. So we're kinda in a hold pattern. Plus, we looked at getting an attorney that would do the paperwork to do that, and the number was
Pretty
$10
significant.
to $15,000, and we had about $1,500 earmarked in a budget that we thought we could use. Again, the county attorney was gonna look at it, so I think we're just, at this point, we're not moving forward until we understand what the state does. The EMA commission, if I remember right, it'll take the membership, they're gonna change it to be like the conference board. So they'll have 3 bodies, all your school districts, your county board, and then all your incorporated cities.
Incorporated cities, yeah.
All your incorporated cities, and each would have 1 vote. So that, you all know how much difficulty we have getting quorums at those meetings, because they need a quorum within each group, and then all 3 groups. So it's just, I think it's probably something we should be talking to our legislators about, because the EMA commission, and I'll harken back, Dave's here, he probably remembers many years ago when that was kind of really out of control. There were a lot of non-elected officials on that, and these folks indirectly set tax levy. And so it's pretty important that we keep elected officials there, and it's pretty important that those elected officials participate. And so if you get too many in there, I'm very concerned that we would get some kind of runaway stuff going on. So I think we'll keep the MCJCC like it is for a while and see what happens with legislation.
Okay, very good. Nathan?
Jeff and I both also had the housing committee meeting also on Wednesday the 7th. Some good discussion about just what's going on in the county, as well as kind of some forward-looking discussion as to what we need to see to improve the housing situation. I think Jeff had mentioned earlier, there's discussion on that revolving loan fund that the 3 of us probably need to figure out in some kind of a way what we can do. Now Nancy's back, we can just welcome her back with that. So I'm sure she spent half her vacation.
And actually, I think we spent some time looking into that already,
Yeah.
and it sounds like our only option is gonna be to just give that back to the state.
Yeah.
So,
Alrighty, that's what I had.
Okay, I had no committee reports. Dan?
5/24, this is going back a couple weeks because of the Memorial Day, and then I was gone last week. 5/24, full board member meeting with the chamber. 5/25, bi-state trail meeting. And then on 6/1, we had that housing analysis that Jeff and I attended to set up some interviews with who's gonna do our housing study for the county, which I think they've set the dates for like June 15th for those interviews with those 2. Those are the 3 things I had.
Yes, I recall we had participated with the city. They went out with an RFP, got, what was it, Danny, 3?
They had 3.
3 responses, kind of significant differences. So the group decided it'd be best to interview 2 of them just to understand why the significant difference, and get a feel for who they like, and then make a presentation. And I think bottom line is everything was within budget, so.
I did have one, on 6/2, I had bi-weekly Mississippi Valley Workforce Development office hours. That's a bi-weekly meeting. And that's it.
Okay. Kurt, do you have any committees?
On the 7th, I had the same meeting that I was with Jeff.
Okay. Very good. Next is items with the administration office. First is discussion and possible action authorizing the chair to execute the FY 23-24 contract for specialized transportation services with Riverbend Transit in the amount of $7,000. and this is the same, as it's been with River Bend for a number of years now. So, I think they do a good job, and I think that, it's probably one of the best kept secrets, if you would say, that there is in the county. I mean, they provide a tremendous amount of service with nothing more than a phone call for an incredibly reasonable price.
And I'm just thinking, I don't think it's been changed from $7,000 in my tenure on this board.
Yeah.
Dave, I see Dave there shaking his head like, it's probably been 7,000 for
Right.
Yeah.
20 years,
Yes.
30 years, I
That's
don't know,
amazing.
maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'll move the approval.
I'll second.
Motion by Jeff, second by Danny. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Yeah, Randy and his team do a great job up there.
He does do a good job. Next is discussion and possible action to approve a fireworks permit application from David Starkweather. I'd just like to say I was contacted by these folks on this, and I'd like to thank Eric and Kayla and Nancy as well in regard to getting this put together in the right permit application in a timely fashion. And not many of these come across the desk, and so they've got all the information together, and we have the permit in front of us on the application. And I feel it's
So what, Eric, I think I know there were a lot of changes with the fireworks rule and ordinance, and they used to have to get a permit pretty much all the time. But this has changed depending on what you do, is my understanding.
Depending on the type and classification of the fireworks. When the state of Iowa passed legislation to allow consumer fireworks, that's what we see the majority of being displayed, used. That does not require this type of permit, as long as you're shooting them off during the state prescribed dates, or cities and counties can pass, other ordinances at the local level limiting times of display. However, if you're going to shoot off display fireworks, which is defined in the American Pyrotechnics Association manual, these are the large ones that you see, the JCs and the chambers of cities and counties, shoot off. Cities and counties may adopt a provision for a permit and issue those permits for display fireworks, and it sounded like that's what this individual was wanting. And so you have the authority under state code to grant that permit, to put whatever local requirements you want within that permit. We've had that permit for some time, although as mentioned, it doesn't get requested that often because, quite frankly, the consumer fireworks you can buy have gotten pretty good, pretty large, but some people still want the larger ones, and they work with operators like, is it JMS or something out of Minneapolis area, I think, so, to be the operator on those, and so.
They're gonna be letting these off at their residence?
I believe that, yeah.
2410 Burlington Road, it looks
Down
like.
Burlington Road.
I didn't see the application completed come back in. I just worked with Kayla to find it and get it to Scott so he can get it to these.
So that application has like a proof of insurance, and it has the fire,
That's what- that's
the
kinda
local
weird.
fire authority has
Fire
to.
district chief.
Fire
Signed off
district
on it.
chief has to sign off on it and all that, which is all, so they're aware that it's going on and.
So the fire chief does sign off on it?
Yep.
That, I guess I had a little bit of concern. I'm all about letting people do this, but with as dry as it
Yeah.
is this year.
That's the thing.
Yeah, I think if you look at this particular one, I think there was a caveat put on there with some rain.
Does that mean
Range, yeah.
Yep,
only if it rains? How much
So that
rain?
was, that was a question that just this morning popped into my mind. I mean, the way things are going, it's not inconceivable that we could be under a burn ban here in short order. Now, burn ban, my understanding, and I would probably want Jim to look at my opinion on this, would be that's open burning. I don't know if it extends, but that is a good question. What about if we get to that tinderbox type situation and we issue these types of permits? Do we just leave it up if the fire chief of that jurisdiction is still okay with it? Is there a way to rescind these permits if it gets, to a really hazardous situation?
Well, I would think the whole notion of the permit is that now the fire chief is aware, has the date, and if there's an issue, she she, in this case, June Ann, would reach out to the,
Come back to
to the operator and say, hey, you know, either do something or let's put some provisions in there for safety.
So, but anyway, that's kind of the brief explanation on these permits. Some of the things that are on ours are not, on our permit application, are not required by state code. I think they're very appropriate. The fire chief, the insurance requirements, those aren't necessarily required. But I think when we adopted this form, we did a pretty good job of covering the bases there for these considerations.
I think it's worked well for a number of
Yeah.
years.
The form says credentials and licenses are attached, but I didn't see anything.
We have them, I just didn't put them in the packet.
What are we talking about? Is it fireworks credentialing and notification, or what's it?
Hang on a second.
Is this, these folks have special expertise or anything?
We have a letter of clearance from the US Department of Justice for this individual to handle federal explosives. They have a license permit to do that.
Didn't know that was a thing.
So it sounds like it's
A
probably a
notice
permit.
of clearance, we have proof of insurance, $1 million of insurance.
So that would help, that's not necessarily pyrotechnic, but that's probably above and beyond like fireworks or displays. Because they do have to have the proper DOT transportation, licensing to transport these types and levels of fireworks. And so if he has that, he's already got that $1 million liability for the transportation and handling.
Yep.
Which you would have to have for display fireworks to just transport them as well, so.
I guess I would have no problem with it, subject to the fire chief's, you know, discretion if there is a burn ban or other circumstances on the ground that would make it dangerous.
That's already in the permit process. So I'll move the approval.
Second.
Thanks, Eric. Thanks, Nancy.
Motion by Jeff, second by Kurt, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, motion passes. Anything other, Nancy?
I don't have anything else.
Okay. Next is, receive information from county employees. Do I have any in county sheriff, you'd like to speak?
If I can just get the time and date on that permit. For the fireworks permit.
Yeah.
I'll just forward it out to our guys so they know that.
The length of duration is 1 hour long, is listed
On the third,
on.
Yep.
What do you want?
I would assume around darkness, but it doesn't have a specific time.
I wasn't gonna say that.
4 o'clock in the morning.
Noon.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, it doesn't have a specific time.
Thank you.
Answer your question, okay. Any other, county employees wish to speak on an issue? No? Next is receive comments from the public. Do I have anyone from the public that would like to address? Just state your name and address and your issue if you would, please. Get that
pull that
microphone down there at you, there you go.
Yeah, I was gonna come down a little. I'm Connie Fuller. I live in Grandview, Iowa. And the issue is Isley Cemetery. Just wondering if there's any updates. And I see Mr. Berry isn't here, so does he pass things on for this meeting? Or, I know he was here last time, but
I think he's planning to come back and, I think his goal is to come back and talk to the board on the 19th, so next Monday. He's at a conference, this week.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have not heard any update on the issue.
Yeah, I think he's still trying to make contact and get resolved the two that we had that
Yeah,
out there
yeah.
that were still a
I
question.
know there were two, yeah.
There's-
Last update, there were
Last
two, he
update,
couldn't.
there was two that they still needed to get, contacts and some details worked out, I'll put it that way.
And
But I do have your number, Connie, and already know to call you if it's gonna be on the agenda.
yeah, that'd be
Okay.
great. There's still 2 other families that haven't been able to come in. One's in the VA hospital in Iowa City. Now that you mentioned lots of extra things thrown at this family. But I'd heard that there's 2 more cemeteries not listed on the list I was given. One of them next to Mulberry School. The tombstones were there. That sounds bizarre, but
It's on a list.
Is
It may
it?
not be one that you have, but it's definitely on the list. It's the Old Mary's Cemetery, and we
yeah.
have a lot of history already
But there's,
documented on it.
good, there's two more that I didn't have, there isn't on this, I should show that copy, I guess.
If you have additional information, it's helpful. That's the only way that we sometimes know
Sure.
more to look into.
This list someone gave me says on private land and which ones are on private land, which ones hold, who owns it, holds a deed to it. There's a WIRZ, W-I-R-Z, that I'd never heard of, and they have directions, but the cemetery isn't shown on Find a Grave, and that's where I came across with. A couple others, they do have it, they're Pioneer. The ones that are Pioneer are noted, and then the number of people buried there, and Isley Cemetery. See if I'm on the right section. 91 graves at the Isley Cemetery on Burlington Road. There was some more, just said the location and whether they were deemed pioneer or not. So, just wanted to keep me in mind. I know everybody's working on different things. That's why I sit in on your council meetings, they're very interesting. I don't think I had any others. Mike came with me and we wrote something up together for the last meeting. As far as anybody being up there, we don't know that, we don't have any correspondence from the present owners. But this has been going on a long while, at least 5 years, in 2018, so we just want it to be resolved, and we'd like to see pictures, and we're not allowed in there as yet. Even if we were to go, or we probably wouldn't go because they have electric fence, they have to open up gates, there's cattle there now. That wasn't an issue 5 years ago. It's with the new owners and the state code and all this coming into place, so.
Jim's working to get this resolved and getting some access and all the logistics and everything, trying to get this figured out with these private property situations.
You were recently allowed access up there, wasn't you and your husband?
With Kelsey Bell.
Yeah.
She drove us up, yes, in her ATV. That's another issue. When you talk about access to cemetery, we walked it. You couldn't possibly walk it now. Not just because I'm old, but people saying, well, you'd have to go up on an ATV. Well, who has an ATV sitting at the bottom of the hill to take people up? And then it's on their time, Kelsey Bell's time or Austin Bell's time to do that. But so, yeah, when she took us up, we walked around and saw some flags, and they said that's where they found tombstones. But there's a lot more in the ground, halfway in the ground. According to Joe Furlong, you shouldn't just pick them up. It depends on who made what the tombstone was made out of. You could do more damage by just pulling it out of the ground than if you use the proper tools. And he's been trained for all this and has taken care of St. Malachi Church or cemetery at the church and a couple others. But my private opinion is, if you can't take them out to try to read them, what's the use of saying I found a tombstone? I have no idea who it belongs to or the family, and there's just a whole lot of questions that opens up.
Okay.
So if we go up, we were told we have to, if they allow us, when they allow us. I've had no communication from Kelsey Bell since she denied us going up to the cemetery on Memorial Day.
Kelsey did send me a text that she wanted to share. There was some information. They cleaned up the cemetery. They did grant access to you guys recently. You was up there for maybe an hour and a half. There may have been an issue with a family member. I think to have access, you have to have a family member. She wasn't sure if you guys did or not. So I know there's still some confusion around there. She wanted me to share that information today.
Well, I have the text that she first asked, could we please meet and talk about cemetery? We had no idea anybody was up there cleaning up anything or any reason, for any reason. They live there, we don't. The text then said, I have to know if you're coming. We were gonna meet. We stood in the barn, or not the barn, the farm yard, and talked. And she said, I really want you to see how much good we've cleaned up. And I said, okay. So we rode up there in her ATV, and she stopped and got out. Mike walked more than me. And found that they cleaned up a lot. And she asked a couple questions about fencing was rolled up and that it hadn't been stretched out, whether they could take that out. It's kind of like, well, that's up to you. If they did fix the fence that was there and pull it up so it's maybe this high off the ground. I mean, better than in a cattle panel, so it's not a solid fencing. Do you have anything to say, Mike? Mike, did you have something to add? That we went up there, she said we were up there for an hour and a half and we saw what she said was one of the stones was loose and it had probably been moved a couple times. And her first big concern to us, before everything else came out, was there were people in the cemetery, and something about teenagers from Illinois showing up. And please don't put this on Facebook, but it was all about, she didn't want anybody up there. She didn't want to take time to go with them. And as an owner, you probably would say, you go up and come back down in 15 minutes. I don't know. She was setting up a contract with an insurance agent and also with lawyer, Mr. Eichelberger.
I think our biggest access has changed and for Kelsey to say that there was a concern about whether or not that there was a relationship, that's ridiculous. I mean, Connie's been going up there since she was a little girl. Kind of hard to prove. I mean, to take DNA to prove that Connie's related to the Isleys is kind of difficult. She is. I mean, her great-great-grandparents. She has the family tree. Her grandmother was an Isley, great-grandmother was an Isley, and she's gone up there with her grandmother since she was a little girl. So I don't know what Kelsey's.
She said, I couldn't identify,
But the
where am I?
access-
I'm sorry, go
But
ahead.
the access has changed. I used to drive up that with my four-wheel drive pickup. You didn't need an ATV, and that was just a couple of years ago. Now they've changed it so that there's they have a horse and a cow or two, and they put the pin with a double gate. And she said electric fence, I didn't know it's electric fence, so her concern was, well, don't go over there because there's electric fence and it'll hurt you. You've been around electric fences, we used to test them by grabbing them, but,
Yeah, been there, done that.
anyway, you have to open up gates, it's their property, we know that. You know, it's their business, but to make, I think they're trying to make it so that nobody can go up there.
Yeah,
That's our concern.
Yeah, I think this is a difficult issue at best. You know, I will say, I have had people reach out to me from Nebraska, other areas, asking about cemeteries in Muscatine County. So there are people that are curious just to visit historic cemeteries and things of that nature. And you can see as a private landowner, you know, that could get to be a challenge. So I think once we understand what the rules are, what everybody's allowed, I have confidence Mr. Berry will come back with some good recommendations for us, and we'll move forward and see if we can't resolve the situation.
Yeah,
That works for everybody.
yeah, and I hope so. We just want access when we can, and the hunting, you know, we were told, well, you can't go up there during hunting season. I'm a hunter, hunting season starts late August, squirrel season, and if you look area, it goes from late August through, spring, April for turkey season. So that takes a big part of the year out, and then you can't go up there when it's wet, so that most years, not this year, but most years, that takes care of April. So that leaves you May, June, July, and part of August. And then there's that 10-day limit. So that doesn't leave you much time that you can visit.
Yeah.
Okay.
And he forgot mushroom hunters. They have mushroom hunters like to go on their own land and not be,
Well, they didn't tell us we can go up there during mushroom season, dear.
well, okay, thought I had that written down, but,
Okay.
yeah. And the sooner the better with Mr. Berry, just to let us know. Still would go up there, but it'd have to be a lot of effort on our part, which we would do, but like I said, if you can't get up there without an ATV, people are not gonna bring their own ATV to the Bell's farmyard and say, I just wanna go up to the cemetery now. One other issue that Mike was talking with Kelsey Bell, she said some bizarre things and told him, don't lean on that tombstone. She's really worried about having a liability on her property. Well, at the time, he said the tombstone wasn't moving back and forth or anything. And when we walked up to them, there's not, they're not being moved. If they were with whoever Kelsey had brought in to clean up. And they did a fantastic job, what I saw of cleaning up. Now is the issue, who has to maintain it and when can we work out a time to go up there and give them a 10-day notice. That was the thing you left out. And that's in the state code. Well, if you don't agree on a 10-day, and then you have pick another one, and you pick another one, I don't know. I don't, I know that's in the code, but 10 days in between the hunters. Well, thank you
Okay.
very
Thank you,
much
Connie.
for listening and getting some other information out to you.
Good morning, Dave.
Good morning. Dave Watkins, 2566 122nd Street, Moscow, Iowa. Just came a little bit, I noticed on the board meeting concerning the shooting range and some of my concerns. I go back a long time working in county politics, but at one time, we couldn't do anything without a bond issue. And then we found out we were in a zone in the city where we could borrow up to $500,000, and I'm sure that's probably changed by now. And so we started fixing buildings up, which you guys have continued to do. At some point in time, and part of the reason there was interest rates were very cheap for the county, practically nothing. And so with inflation, we figured now's the time to do it. Well, since then, interest rates have went up considerably, even for the counties. And I question, at what point does the county need to bond to let the people make a decision versus 5 members on the Board of Supervisors? Is that $500,000? Is that $1 million? Is that $2 million? $5 million? We're spending a fair amount of money to get sewer and water down to the pits, which probably isn't going to give us a lot of income, and the income's going to go to the Conservation Board, not to the county. Gave $400,000 to the city for a recreation facility, which I know is other income, which eventually maybe we'll get back to where income is directly from the body that does it. So I'm a little concerned, and you'll find out the law whether you'll have to go to a bond issue for $1 million or not. Since it won't be in the enterprise district, I don't think you're gonna put it downtown here.
I believe the code now is $750,000, if I'm not mistaken, correct, Nancy?
That doesn't surprise me. that
Yeah,
it
the
has went up.
legislature just enacted
Yeah.
a new code last year. I
Yeah.
believe it's as of July 1st.
Right, yeah. And I'm of the opinion, once interest rates get high in my own operation, yeah, I like to do capital projects, But at some point in time, you have to say, oh, maybe I better wait on this capital project. Because the cost is gonna go back, in our case, back to the taxpayers. Yeah, I can afford the taxes, that's not a problem. But there's a lot of people in this county that are on a fixed income from a retirement plan of their industry that doesn't go up, like a lot of us who have farms have been able to increase our rent prices. So that concerns me. I think that, I question whether to put $2 million into a facility just for our sheriff in Muscatine, it's a good idea. We need the range probably. But would we be better off to, and I realize we like to have control, would we be better off to talk to Johnson County and to Scott County? I mean, that range can be used probably at least 100 days a year, considering weather conditions, maybe up to 150 days a year. I think that's something that you maybe want to consider to try and spread that cost over. You're not talking a lot of miles between here and Davenport or here in Iowa City, depending on which part of the county you put this in. So, you know, I watch World TV, and I happened to watch Howard Buffett when they interviewed him, and they showed his facility over in Decatur, Illinois. Now, that's one you're not going to want to build, because I think it cost Howard put $54 million in. But it's a facility the state probably should build, because training an officer in that thing, where you have simulation in a grocery store, or simulation in a school, where that officer can shoot at people and they keep track of how many bullets and whether he got hit or whether he doesn't get hit. That's something I think you people may want to talk to, and the law enforcement people may want to talk to the state about looking at in their training facilities, because this whole thing has changed considerably over the years. So, those are my concerns. I'm interested in the cemetery thing, and the fact that, oh, probably 3 miles from a local farmer decided to build his own cemetery, and so they have 3 people buried there. And I'm thinking, okay, 75 years from now, when that farm sells to somebody else, some other board, and you won't have to worry about it probably, but some other board's gonna have the same problem. So. And I don't know whether you can restrict people from burying on their own ground.
Yeah, this is, I think, you know, this is all news to us.
Yes.
I think we've had a couple of cemeteries we just found out about in the county, and, you know, Jim's doing a lot of work and a lot of research about what our obligations are and what the opportunities are. But this is, could be a large issue.
Yeah, it will be. So, thank you very much.
Yep.
Thanks, Dave.
Thanks for the input, Dave.
Do I have anyone else from the public that would like to address the board? Seeing no one come forward, it is 9:43, and we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.